The woman who used to be Donald Trump's strongest MAGA soldier is continuing and escalating her rebellion against him, particularly after he finally called her out on live TV. And in turn, she's criticizing his approach to affordability and the Epstein files, and this is too glorious not to cover. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we've got a lot to talk about. Here is Marjorie Taylor Greene talking to Sean Spicer, who he was Trump's first press secretary. So he was the guy who used to do Carolyn Levitt's job, number one, the very first one.
I want to get back to the issue of inflation for a second. You tweeted out inflation hit a 40-year high, record high of 9% under Biden. I give President Trump credit and his administration for bringing it down 2.5, but prices are still sky high for families drowning in debt. Congress needs to get to work. The American people can no longer afford excuses. Okay, got it. For a lot of people that go into the supermarket, just tell me what do you, again, Speaker Johnson comes to you and says, you know what, Marjorie, you're right again. What do I need to do? Tell me, what are those bills out of that stack that I have to address this? What is it that you think he could do to help tamp down inflation?
That's another great question. Well, first of all, President Trump and his administration does deserve a lot of credit for lowering inflation and holding it steady. But that doesn't bring prices down. And so gaslighting the people and trying to tell them that prices have come down is not helping. It's actually infuriating people because people know what they're paying at the grocery store. They know what they're paying for their kids' clothes and school supplies. They know what they're paying for their electricity bills. And so that approach does not work. We need compassion and show that we care about the American people and show that we are in the trenches with them on what they're going through.
So, damn. Okay, again, this is the tightrope that she has felt compelled to walk. She will criticize Trump, often indirectly but firmly, but recognizes that he's still the locus of power in Republican politics now, and so she has to be careful. But that's stunning, because even though if you ask her, so are you accusing Donald Trump of gaslighting the American people? She would say, well, no, but his advisors. She just accused Donald Trump of gaslighting the American people, which of course he is. Now, I would argue when she says things like, I give Donald Trump credit for bringing inflation down, and then she corrected herself, it's holding steady. It's actually ticked upwards since Trump took office compared to where it was falling under Biden. So this is the problem. She's actively contributing to some of that gaslighting herself. It's like having a foot, again, I say foot in both worlds, but I guess more accurate to say, it's like the ground is splitting beneath her. And she has a foot on one side of the crack and the other on the other side of the crack, and that crack is splitting, and it's going to become a chasm. And it's going to eventually become impossible for her to do. She's managing it as well as I think a person can, for all the reasons that we've laid out in previous videos. But she did just accuse Donald Trump of gaslighting the American people, recognizing that if they don't fix their media message and their policy towards affordability and inflation, they're going to get crushed in 2026. But that was on affordability. She also is turning on Trump with respect to his colossal mismanagement of the Epstein files. Take a look.
The release of these documents, and the president denies any wrongdoing, hasn't been accused of wrongdoing. Only on CBS Mornings, we are joined now by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Congresswoman, good morning.
I want to begin. Thanks for having me.
Good morning to you. I want to begin with the release of the Epstein files, the vote to release those files. You are on the side of releasing them, and you're on that side despite President Trump saying that only a very bad or stupid Republican would be standing where you are. Why is this so important to you?
We're going to get to her answer in a second, but way to tee that up. Remember, we've talked about this in previous videos in the past 24 hours. Trump is ducking from the press and reporters on the Epstein files, but he is attacking from the comforts and distance and reclusivity of Truth Social. He's attacking members of his own party. Not for the first time, probably not for the last, viciously attacking Greene and Nancy Mace, who is a moron, by the way. I would argue in many ways worse than Marjorie Taylor Greene, which is shocking. If you asked me that 2 years ago, I would have said the exact opposite. But Nancy Mace is losing her mind. Marjorie Taylor Greene, either for cynical purposes or out of revenge, because Trump humiliated her for effectively rejecting her desire to become senator for Georgia, or at least the Republican nominee for Georgia. She's at least trying to present as a normal person. So Trump has continued to lash out at those two, and Thomas Massie, and Lauren Boebert was the other one. So with that in mind, basically, like, hey, you're doing this despite Trump saying you're an idiot. What do you say to that?
It's for the victims. These women have been waiting, some of them for decades. I talked to several victims that were raped by Jeffrey Epstein back in the 90s. And so this is information that has needed to come out for a very long time. And the American people have demanded it. And so the American people deserve to see transparency from their government. Rich, powerful people should not be protected. That is completely wrong. And it's a message to victims everywhere, victims of rape, human trafficking, and children who are trapped in terrible situations, that the government will not protect the predators, that we will work hard to protect the victims.
So, Congresswoman, that all sounds reasonable. A lot of people agree with you. And so the question comes to mind, why is GOP leadership and the president himself so opposed to letting these files be released? As the Wall Street Journal...
Again, this is an impossible question to answer if you're a devout MAGA cultist. There's no way to answer this question in a way that is honest and doesn't piss off Donald Trump, because the obvious answer is the reason GOP leadership opposes this is because Donald Trump opposes this. They don't give a shit. Trump does. And the reason Trump opposes this is because he will either be implicated or at the bare minimum embarrassed by the release of these files, because his name is in them in very unflattering ways, and so are people that he actually cares about, to the extent that he cares about anybody, as a malignant narcissist. I'm not seeing this. I am curious what Marjorie Taylor Greene and how she's going to answer.
Put it, he looks like he has something to hide, even if he doesn't. So put on your political hat here. Why is he so opposed?
Well, I've talked to many of the women, and the women themselves have said that Donald Trump did nothing wrong. And even their attorney said that Donald Trump was the only one that helped them. So I'll just being very honest with you, it's something that I don't understand. I think it's a huge miscalculation. And I truly just stand with the women, and I think they deserve to be the ones that we're fighting for.
Listen. If you asked me a year ago, is Marjorie Taylor Greene a smart person? I'd have been like, hell no, she's an anti-Semite, she's a conspiracy theorist, she's racist and xenophobic. The shit she has said about members of the Squad, for example, and the shit she's co-signed, she's a moron. Well, there's a cunning intellect there, because again, you could see with some nervousness, right? She's like, fuck, how am I gonna, negotiate this particular one? That was, of course, it was wrong, right? It was wrong. Like, that answer was wrong, but that was probably the best political answer for somebody who's trying to release the Epstein files against Trump's will while also continuing to be a MAGA cultist, avoiding his wrath. That's probably the best answer I've seen. Again, the truth is Trump will be embarrassed by, if not implicated, in the release of the Epstein files. That's why he's doing this. But she's acknowledging that this is a miscalculation, which is more than pretty much any... I don't think Nancy Mace would use that expression. I don't think Lauren Boebert would use that expression. The only one of the 4 Republican congresspeople voting on this discharge petition to force the release of the Epstein files, the only 2 of the 4 that would speak in such terms are Thomas Massie and now Marjorie Taylor Greene. Also note something else. Marjorie Taylor Greene, this is the first time that I can think of, and all the clips I've heard of her, where she did not use Trump's title. I deliberately do not use Trump's title. As much as I loathe certain presidents of the past on policy and other things, like President Bush or President Reagan, I will still call them President Bush and President Reagan, because I still have my respect for the office is a sufficient balance for my personal contempt for their policy. With Trump, I refuse to. Fuck that guy. I'm not going to call him, title Trump. She does all the time. And I think we're starting to see some first strains, like some deeply personal strains breaking through publicly, where she doesn't say President Trump. She says Donald Trump. She said it twice. That's the first time in years that I've ever heard Marjorie Taylor Greene say that. She is usually fastidious. She very rarely, if ever, referred to President Biden by his title, right? So, very interesting stuff. As a matter of fact, I'm curious if and when she's ever asked again about the 2020 election, if she'll moderate some of her rhetoric there. Because remember, she was one of the big stop the steal election deniers, right? It's interesting. So, Politico, of course, has a report as well that Marjorie Taylor Greene blasts Trump's Epstein focus. She said if Republicans don't pivot to affordability quickly, the midterm elections are Democrats to lose. Quote, it's insanely the wrong direction to go. The 5-alarm fire is healthcare and affordability for Americans. That's where the focus should be. Quote, this is me wanting my party to do something, to win and do something good for the American people. It's not me going against. It's me pushing my party to say this is what we need to be doing. Not only is this the right thing we need to do for America, but if you want to win the midterms, this is what we need to be doing, delivering for Americans if we want them to send us back in 2026. So that's her trying to marriage. As far as she's concerned, releasing the Epstein files gets us out of the way. Like, let's move on. Let's give justice for the victims, and then let's move on. She sees not just justice in this, but also political wisdom. And she's pissed that Trump continues to make this an issue by not only refusing and trying to block the release of the Epstein files, but then going on rants and raves about it. So fascinating development by Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't know if it's sincere or cynical, but I love the fact that it is causing division within the GOP. So you go, girl, if for no other reason than that. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.